Hey, Honors English 2 scholars. Today is Friday, May 1st. Welcome back. It's also a very important day because we are finishing our Part 2 guide. We've got to read 98 to 106 and then complete our reading task. So we actually left off on 98 last time. So we'll pick up with 99 and then we'll finish up our reading guide. So let's take a look at what our task is so we know what we're looking for as we're reading. We are going to answer the questions about Montag from pages 98 to 106 and explain the irony on page 106. Please keep in mind that irony is when the opposite of what we expect occurs. There are a few different types of irony. We don't really need to get into that. You can always throw in a quick Google search if you're still confused about irony. There are some good resources on YouTube out there that really break down the different types of irony. If you're still really struggling with this, you can always just shoot me a message and I'll give those resources to you. I'll help you with that. So first, how does Montag attempt to comfort himself on page 99? Because remember, Mildred's friends were over in the last section that we read. He read them a portion of Dover Beach and it kind of backfired. So as you'll recall, your last reading task was to outline each character's reaction to him reading the poem. So Mildred, her reaction was to distract her friends with mindless entertainment. She wanted to throw on a TV show. After they stormed out and left, she then went and popped a bunch of sleeping pills. Mrs. Phelps' reaction, she was so moved and confused, all she could do was just cry uncontrollably. And then Mrs. Bowles was pissed off. She was really angry because she thought that by Montag reading this poem, it was hurting people. So how does Montag attempt to comfort himself on page 99 after this occurs? Why does he think his hands are gloved with blood on pages 101 to 102? On page 104, Faber tells Montag, make your decision as to which way to jump or fall. What does he mean here? And then you're going to explain the irony. So why don't we go ahead and just get started reading together today. These questions are pretty straightforward, so I'm not really going to go through a lot of that with y'all. So on page 99, I know that our reading task, what we're looking for is how is Montag trying to comfort himself? And when we left off, he went out in the backyard. He hid the rest of the books because he was afraid that his wife would take them, especially after this incident. And he's noticeably upset by how dark and deserted Clarice's house is. On the way downtown, he was so completely alone with his terrible error that he felt the necessity for the strange warmness and goodness that came from a familiar and gentle voice speaking in the night. Already in a few short hours, it seemed that he had known Faber a lifetime. Remember, Faber is the old dude that he met at the park, I think a few years ago. They link back up. They're trying to start this plan to get printing books again, and Faber's given him this little piece in his ear so they can communicate that way. Now he knew that he was two people, that he was above all Montag, who knew nothing, who did not even know himself a fool, but only suspected it. And he knew that he was also the old man who talked to him, and talked to him as the train was sucked from one end of the night city to the other on one long, sickening gasp of motion. In the days to follow, and in the nights when there was no moon, and in the nights when there was a very bright moon shining on the earth, the old man would go on with his talking, and this talking, drop by drop, stone by stone, flake by flake. His mind would well over at last, and he would not be Montag any more. This the old man told him, assured him, promised him. He would be Montag plus Faber, fire plus water. And then one day, after everything had mixed and simmered and worked away in silence, there would be neither fire nor water, but wine. Out of two separate and opposite things, a third. And one day he would look back upon the fool and know the fool. Even now he could feel the start of the long journey, the leave-taking, the going away from the self he had been. So at this point, he's starting to accept that, yeah, he is changing. Everything that he has known up to this point is being questioned. It was good listening to the beetle hum, the sleepy mosquito buzz, and delicate filigree murmur of the old man's voice, at first scolding him and then consoling him in the late hour of the night as he emerged from the steaming subway toward the firehouse world. Pity, Montag, pity. Don't haggle and nag them. You were so recently of them yourself. They are so confident that they will run on forever. But they won't run on. They don't know that this is all one huge, big, blazing meteor that makes a pretty fire in space, but that someday it'll have to hit. They only see the blaze, the pretty fire, as you saw it. Montag, old men who stay at home, afraid, tending their peanut brittle bones have no right to criticize. Yet you almost killed things at the start. Watch it. I'm with you, remember that. I understand how it happened. I must admit that your blind raging invigorated me. God, how young I felt. But now I want you to feel old. I want a little of my cowardice to be distilled in you tonight. The next few hours, when you see Captain Beatty, tiptoe round him. Let me hear him for you. Let me feel the situation out. Survival is our ticket. Forget the poor silly women. So really, Faber's telling Montag to chill the F out here because he doesn't want his impulsive tendencies to ruin their plan. He's like, let me listen to the captain. Let me talk for you. You need to kind of sit this one out. I made them unhappier than they have been in years, I think, said Montag. It shocked me to see Mrs. Phelps cry. Maybe they're right. Maybe it's best not to face things, to run, have fun. I don't know. I feel guilty. No, you mustn't. If there were no war, if there was peace in the world, I'd say fine, have fun. But Montag, you mustn't go back to being just a fireman. All isn't well with the world. Montag perspired. Montag, you listening? My feet, said Montag. I can't move them. I feel so damn silly. My feet won't move. So he's feeling nervous. Listen, easy now, said the old man gently. I know, you're afraid of making mistakes. Don't be. Mistakes can be profited by. Man, when I was young, I shoved my ignorance in people's faces. They beat me with sticks. By the time I was 40, my blunt instrument had been honed to a fine cutting point for me. If you hide your ignorance, no one will hit you and you'll never learn. Now pick up your feet, into the firehouse with you. We're twins. We're not alone anymore. We're not separated out in different parlors with no contact between. If you need help when Beatty pries at you, I'll be sitting right here in your eardrum making notes. Montag felt his right foot, then his left foot move. Old man, he said, stay with me. The mechanical hound was gone, its kennel was empty, and the firehouse stood all about in plaster silence, and the orange salamander slept, with kerosene in its belly, and the fire-throwers crossed upon its flanks, and Montag came in through the silence and touched the brass pole and slid up the dark air, looking back at the deserted kennel, his heart beating, pausing, beating. Faber was a gray moth asleep in his ear for the moment. Beatty stood near the drop hole waiting, but with his back turned, as if he were not waiting. Well, he said to the men playing cards, here comes a very strange beast, which in all tongues is called a fool. He put his hand to one side, palm up, for a gift. Montag put the book in it. Without even glancing at the title, Beatty tossed the book into the trash basket and lit a cigarette. Who are a little wise, the best fools be. Welcome back, Montag. I hope you'll be staying with us now that your fever is done and your sickness over. Sit in for a hand of poker. They sat and the cards were dealt. In Beatty's sight, Montag felt the guilt of his hands. His fingers were like ferrets that had done some evil and now never rested, always stirred, and picked and hid in pockets, moving from under Beatty's alcohol-flamed stare. If Beatty so much as breathed on them, Montag felt that his hands might wither, turn over on their sides, and never be shocked to life again. They would be buried the rest of his life in his coat sleeves, forgotten. For these were the hands that had acted on their own, no part of him. Here was where the conscience first manifested itself to snatch books, dart off with Job and Ruth and Willie Shakespeare, and now, in the firehouse, these hands seemed gloved with blood. Ooh, so I know I have a question about that in my reading guide, so now is probably a good place for us to stop. At this point, you should be able to answer these first two questions. When you're done answering those, go ahead and pick up reading. finish up reading up to 106, be sure to explain that irony for me. Enjoy the rest of your reading. Good luck. And as always, if you have any more questions for me, just hop onto office hours or shoot me an email. Bye, guys.